Hi everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Alumni Archives. I'm here today with Jono, former talks coordinator from 2022. And today we're going to discuss the topic of dissertations. So starting with a very broad, basic question, can you tell us about the topic of your economics dissertation and why you chose it? How you kind of narrowed down your research focus and formulated the question.
Thanks. I'm Jono. Just finished at Warwick, so just did my dissertation last year, and it was around this time actually I was sort of working on finalizing my final dissertation question, which in the end turned out to be entitled do larger committees make better majority decisions with costly expert information? And it's a weird kind of waffly title, but to cut it short, there's an interesting theorem in political science called Condorcet's jury theorem, and it essentially posits that in a committee or jury, when every individual member or juror is correctly informed with a probability exceeding 1/2 about some true state of the world, be it whether someone's guilty or not guilty, whether passing a bill is a good idea or a bad idea, then the larger the committee, the larger the group, the more likely they are to reach the correct decision. And adding one member to the group will always increase the probability of making that right decision. So essentially, it's this idea that groups or majorities, specifically in majority votes. So it's this idea that groups or majorities make better decisions than individuals. And yeah, it was essentially a test of that idea, as it were, or at least the basic tenets, not necessarily the underlying assumptions, in an environment with costly expert information. So that could be an expert witness or a civil servant producing a report, and the agents have to somehow treating that expert testimony as a public good. They have to decide whether they want independently decide whether they want that extra witness to see if it's actually any beneficial to if it's beneficial to their aggregated private signals or their private information, and then looking at dynamics. What happens when you change the group size? Are they more likely to acquire that expert signal? And if they do, are they more likely to make the right decision? So, as sort of the environment terms indicate, that was a theory project. And I guess at the start, I sort of set out to do a theory project, I think, because I really enjoyed political economy and game theory modules in second year. And I really wanted to look more into the general field of information economics, but also with some intersection with political economy. And yeah, I there wasn't really a sort of defined path to the exact question, and you sort of just bobble about between reading a lot of papers and looking for any different avenues you can for a piece of work that hasn't yet been done. And sometimes there are reasons for that, as I found in the process, that some ideas are completely unworkable or have no real life applications. And the module itself is called Research and Applied Economics. So yeah, it's an applied theory project. So yeah, there's got to be a reason for it. And I think around like late November, I'd finally zoned in on this rather weird idea. And yeah, there was no concrete path to it, but overall, it turned out all right, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess it's trying to find a balance between something that hasn't been done and
Yeah.
something that can be done. Okay, do you want to talk to us a little bit about maybe like your relationship with your supervisor, like how you maintain a good, like working relationship and how their guidance helps you in the whole process of writing your dissertation?
Yeah, so my supervisor was just incredible, I think, really. They're really friendly, very open. I put them down as a very high choice, since they were also they were a theorist and a mathematician in a past life, and I still think they still work on some areas of mathematics. So and they were also a lecturer in second year, so I thought, hey, that's nailed on for one of the top two or three choices. But also they picked up a lot of people who didn't necessarily find one of their top 2 or 3 choices. So they were very open, I think, to a whole range of ideas from a very large cohort, and really just the most non-judgmental character. So in that instance, I then took it upon myself that even though I was sort of looking to do something along the lines of the fields in which they operate, I also figured pretty early on that there really weren't any stupid questions. Well, there were some very stupid questions I asked, but you could go to them with anything, absolutely any query, and there'd be something to be resolved, or there'd be something they could do about it. So maintaining a good relationship just meant meeting up literally every week, to discuss each stage of the technical, more meaty part of the project. Not a draft, not writing exactly, but just the technical aspects, and ensuring that they were up to date at every stage as to where I was. Because I think like the dissertation, certainly at Warwick, is something that if you put in the effort and if you put in the work to show your commitment to the research process, A, you'll have a better relationship with your supervisor, but B, I think your supervisor is also more likely to open up and actually put in the effort and reciprocate, to assist you with that whole process. So and that's how you get the most out of it. So yeah, I'd say constant meetings, constant, oftentimes late night emails. Don't do that. Don't email them at 3 a.m. with material you'd like them to read for 2 p.m. the next day. But yeah, that constant communication, I think, really did help. And at the end, the feedback that they gave on each occasion, though you'd have a barrage of this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong on both the literature review and the presentation, it was also so constructive throughout. And that's also part of it. I think if they understand where you're struggling, if that shows up in your assessed work, then they can pinpoint that. And yeah, by the end, it was very friendly, very amicable. And I think, yeah, the key was that they could then understand where I needed the support and where and at what point I was ready to just go off and do things more independently. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Now, I mean, in such a lengthy process, I think it's inevitable to kind of encounter some challenges.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say was kind of like the biggest, challenge you faced, and how did you overcome it?
I think since it was a theory project and I'd done as part of the course, I'd never done research before. And as part of the course, I had done empirical econometrics projects, which are a bit different since, or statistics projects, which are a bit different since you're looking less at the research design, the whole project. You're looking more at the application of different techniques, and they're marked harshly, but not excessively so. Sorry, let me just capture my thoughts there for a second. The most difficult part was setting up the model and the preliminaries. So especially in theory work, you've got to be very careful when describing the timing of the game. You've got to be very careful when describing your strategies, and strategy sets, other primitives like what are the variables exogenous to the model, that you can then bring in later, and then what's created inside the model itself. And that took ages, absolutely ages, to actually finalize. So going back to working with the supervisor, every week it was sending through whatever I'd sort of mucked up from that week before and whatever I'd been working through. And then all the comments being, well, this is probably wrong, but you're making progress. And I mean, that in itself was 4 or 5 weeks, I think, of just for 1 page, maybe even half a page of actual content. So it's that kind of, yeah, it's that kind of block that you need to get through, and in some ways just think to yourself, well, by the end of April, this will be submitted. So no matter what, then it'll be over. But yeah, I think another problem was in the instance of theory proofs, especially since economics, though maths oriented, there's less of an emphasis on proof-based techniques. It's more the application of maths to quite difficult abstract concepts. So actually using formal techniques from fields of, metric spaces or measure theory or real analysis was not something that came naturally at all to me. So I had to rely a lot more on existing proofs and work that had already been done and then modifying them, but simultaneously understanding them, because otherwise there's no way you can modify them in any place. And that was tricky, really tricky. But including one page that I sort of dotted up on the very last day in a bit of a rush and somehow managed to get right. But yeah, nonetheless, that was tough. But yeah, the fact that my supervisor was a former mathematician as well really helped with some of the proofs, certainly just getting everything correct, and making sure that I wasn't overshooting in trying to be too ambitious in terms of what I could do, and making sure that beforehand everything was actually correct, which was important, I think.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think, I mean, you kind of touched on it, but yeah, I mean, again, coming back to how long this whole, I mean, work is, it probably is the biggest thing that at that point you've done. How do you, yeah, it must be hard to kind of keep motivation and stay as hardworking throughout the whole process. So I guess you kind of, you were saying how knowing that the deadline is set and there's no extending it helps. Is there any other kind of tips to stay on track, stay motivated?
I mean, yeah, there were certainly points at which I kind of hated it. And that's not to put people off. It's just, and that was actually a good warning that my supervisor set out at the beginning, was that research is hard and you probably will want to just stop it all at one point. And I think that's what puts perhaps a lot of people off the module, because they're scared of a year-long process where they can't necessarily see. I mean, with an exam, it's you revise, you get the knowledge down, and you spit it out on paper. Whereas actually, it's got to be that more consistent effort throughout. But I think throughout that, I sort of kept in my mind that, like, this, I think almost the fact that it was a substantial piece of work actually meant a lot, because it's something that is substantial. You can show, you can show, I guess, employers and also potential MSc or MRes admissions tutors later on that, hey, this is actually something I succeeded in semi-independently, because the write-up is entirely independent and without, for the last month, you're without contact from your supervisor. So that, I mean, that's probably the trickiest part, when the write-up is an intense but quite difficult section. I think, yeah, just viewing it as something that is so much more important than any other 30 cap module you're doing. And I think even if you do start to hate it at points, it is just making sure that you sort of give it the dedication that it really does need. And then at the end, like, there's a little RAE celebration drinks that they have after everyone's submitted. Unfortunately, I just finished the dissertation itself, so I went home to sleep. But yeah, I don't know how anyone could actually go in, but yeah, just recognizing that not only will it be done, but you'll feel very happy that you did it, and you will be glad that you did it. So yeah,
and
that was waffle, but
yeah, you finish with something like concrete, like it's immense work, but it's big reward as well, I can imagine. And now in the stage you're at today, would you say, like, taking a look back, like, has writing your dissertation and even just like the topic that you chose, has it impacted where you are today, like, or whether it be academically or professionally?
Well, I mean, currently I'm an economist in the civil service, which I'd secured before learning about my dissertation results, or before finishing the dissertation. So not necessarily connected, but and it's something that I've sort of had a look at beforehand, but I've never done sort of other academic work or research beforehand, and never saw it as a very serious avenue. But I am now actually quite motivated to maybe do a master's, and then, depending on how much I like academic economics, see if then a PhD is something that would interest me. Yeah, I mean that's still at least 2 or 3 years off now, I think. As I'm enjoying where I am, and I do see a future in the public sector and the civil service, and it's really interesting stuff. But at the same time, that avenue does still feel open. And yeah, there's always a time. I mean, your 20s are something that I'm really looking forward to. Generally, yeah. And there's a huge amount of stuff I can pick up, and I think having written a dissertation, I'm more disciplined certainly as a result. So in my day-to-day work, I do feel more committed to fighting through more tiring aspects of work that I'd otherwise just want to procrastinate and put off, but also ambitious to explore a lot more avenues than I otherwise might have considered. So yeah, it's been more important for confidence, I think, than anything. But and we'll see where it takes me, I think.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been really insightful, and I will definitely be looking back at this next year when I start my dissertation, if I start my dissertation. But yeah, thank you very much.